Tangled in Tuscany. Chapter 27. The Long Drive Back. The apartment still held the faint scent of the candle she'd lit the night before. Warm vanilla, and something woodsy, now mingling with the cool morning air drifting in from the open balcony doors. Florence's Sunday hum carried upward from the street below, the murmur of voices, a scooter rattling past, the clink of dishes from a cafe. But Sophia's eyes weren't on the view. They were on Luca, standing just inside the threshold, sunlight spilling across the shoulders of his shirt. He didn't speak, didn't ask the question she knew was in him. He simply waited, his stillness almost louder than words. Her gaze dropped to the table, where the last of her prints lay in neat stacks. She touched the edge of one, Tuscany's late harvest light streaming across a row of vines, then slipped it in her portfolio and zipped the case shut. The sound felt final, but not heavy. "Let's go," she said. Her voice wasn't rushed. No uncertainty clung to the words. She stood, slinging the strap of her camera bag across her shoulder, then walked to the door. They descended the narrow stairwell together, footsteps echoing off the plaster walls. Outside, the late morning sun painted the street in soft gold. She caught a glimpse of him in that light, the tilt of his head, the shadow at his jaw, and for a moment she was back on that first afternoon in the vineyard, watching him among the vines. Something inside her chest gave a small, decisive thrum. This wasn't a return born of obligation or nostalgia. Whatever lay waiting for her in Tuscany, she wasn't going back because she had to. She was going because she wanted to. And she could tell, from the way he looked at her without pressing for more, that he understood the difference. They left Florence without hurry, easing through streets lined with shuttered windows and laundry flapping from balconies. The city receded in slow frames. The pale stone of old buildings, the rust-red roofs, the curve of the Arno sliding away behind them. In the rearview mirror, the skyline grew smaller, until it was only the faint suggestion of towers against the sky. Luca rolled the windows down, letting the warm air wrap around them, carrying the faint resin scent of sun-warmed cypress and the mineral tang of road dust. They didn't fill the space with chatter. The road wound into open countryside, through fields still carrying the gold of late summer, and villages with stone walls so close she could have reached out and touched them. Normally, the sight of such places would have pulled her camera from its bag. Today, she let them pass. The quiet between them wasn't the brittle silence of before. It had softened into something unspoken but shared, like the air was warmer simply because they were both in it. An old Italian pop song came on the radio, tinny but bright, and she startled at the familiarity. She glanced at him, smiling in spite of herself. "Chiara sang this in the kitchen," she said, remembering the flour on her hands. "Gioff che enthusiasm." He gave her a sidelong look, half smiling. "Don't." "I wasn't going to," she replied, and the laugh that escaped her was light, easy. The song played on, blending with the rush of air through the windows. And for the first time in weeks, she realized she was breathing without thinking about it. Somewhere beyond a ridge heavy with late summer olives, the road curved and the horizon suddenly opened up. Hills rolled away, layered golds and greens, the air softer here, touched with the scent of sun-warmed earth. Luca's hand lifted from the wheel, pointing toward a narrow dirt lane that branched off and climbed a low rise. "Let's take a detour," he said. The way he said it, calm, almost casual, still sent a ripple through her, like the start of a song you already knew you'd want to hear again. The turn was so unexpected she almost missed it, the tires crunching over pale dust as the car climbed higher. With every bend, the view widened. Vineyards stitched like green seams across the land, olive groves flashing silver under the sun, and far in the distance, a glint of water that shifted with the light. When they reached the crest, he cut the engine. The sudden quiet wrapped around them, thick and alive, broken only by the faint hum of cicadas somewhere down the hill. Sophia stepped out, the warmth of the ground seeping up through her sandals, the wind catching her hair and tossing it across her cheek. The air smelled faintly of grass and ripe fruit, layered with something older, like stone warmed through years of summer. Below them, the hills seemed to fold into each other endlessly, bathed in late afternoon light so rich it felt like she could taste it. "Wow," she whispered, not realizing she'd spoken aloud. Luca came to stand beside her, close enough that his sleeve brushed her bare arm. The touch was light, accidental in appearance, but it grounded her more than the earth beneath her feet. "It's beautiful," she said, still gazing at the horizon. He murmured. "I used to stop in places like this." She turned to look at him, catching the sunlight along the line of his jaw, the faint curl of hair at his temple. His eyes met hers. Sometimes. Mostly to breathe. Her pulse stuttered. She could have looked back at the view, could have kept the moment safe and still. But the way he was watching her, steady, unguarded, felt like standing on the edge of something she couldn't name yet. The wind shifted again, lifting a loose strand of her hair across her lips. Without breaking eye contact, he reached up and tucked it gently behind her ear, his fingers brushing her skin in a way that made the entire hillside feel warmer. She didn't step back. The wind met her first, warm and restless, carrying with it the scent of grass and the faint sweetness of wild fennel from somewhere down the slope. The view was staggering, rolling gold hills stitched with green, the patchwork of vines leading the eye toward a horizon softened by the haze of late afternoon. But she didn't look at the hills for long. She felt him before she turned. Luca, moving into her space like he'd been pulled there, like distance wasn't an option anymore. The brush of his arm against hers was small, almost accidental, but the heat from it seeped into her, stealing her attention from everything else. "You used to stop here when you needed to think," she said softly, her voice almost lost to the wind. "I did." His tone was low, almost private. "Not anymore." The words should have made her smile, but they tangled with the way he was looking at her. Steady, intent, as if measuring the exact moment to cross whatever line they'd been circling for months. She didn't breathe when his hand rose, fingers brushing her cheek with a reverence that startled her. The calluses caught lightly against her skin, a contrast that made her lean into the touch without thinking. His thumb traced along her jaw, slow enough that she could feel the shiver move down her spine. Her pulse was loud in her ears. The other hand found her waist, not tentative this time, but sure. The pressure was enough to draw her closer, until the heat of his body pressed into hers. She could feel the slow expansion of his chest against her own, the faint shift of his breath as if he, too, was calibrating himself to the moment. Then his mouth was near, so close she could feel the ghost of it at the corner of hers. Not a kiss yet, but a question. She didn't hesitate. She turned toward him, and the kiss landed. Warm, deliberate, with the kind of care that speaks of too many nights, thinking about how it might feel. His lips moved over hers slowly, like he was learning the shape of her mouth one pass at a time. There was no rush, no fumbling, just heat unfolding, building from somewhere deep. Her hands found his shoulders first, the solid breadth of them anchoring her. Then, almost without thought, they slid upward into his hair, fingers threading through the dark strands, holding him there. He deepened the kiss in answer, his thumb sweeping just under her ribs, the edge of the touch making her inhale sharply. It was impossible not to move closer. She stepped into him, her hips meeting his, the connection making the air around them feel denser, thicker. The world blurred. The hills, the sky, the hum of the wind, they faded until there was only him. The taste of him, faintly like wine and something she couldn't name, but had been missing without knowing it. When they parted for breath, it was only a fraction, their foreheads nearly touching. She could feel the trace of his breath on her lips, his hand still at her waist, holding her as though she might vanish. But she didn't want to vanish, she wanted more. Her hands drifted down, palms sliding along the line of his arms until she reached his wrists, curling her fingers lightly around them. She felt the tension in him, restrained, contained. And somehow that restraint made everything sharper. He dipped his head again, And this time the kiss was less careful. Not rough, but deeper, hungrier, the kind that made her toes curl inside her shoes. She pressed back with equal urgency, her fingers clutching the fabric of his shirt, feeling the heat beneath. A soft sound escaped her. Not quite a sigh, not quite a moan, and she felt him react to it, his hand at her waist tightening just slightly. The other slid up her back, palm warm against her spine through the thin fabric of her blouse. The wind lifted her hair, tangling it briefly around his fingers where they rested near the base of her neck. He smoothed it away, his fingertips grazing the sensitive skin there, and her knees felt less certain beneath her. The kiss broke again, but neither of them stepped back. They stayed there, caught in the aftershocks of it, eyes locked in a silence that was somehow louder than words. "Yo." Her voice was unsteady. She tried again. "You take your time." His mouth curved faintly, but there was nothing casual in his gaze. "I don't want to miss anything." The simplicity of it unraveled something in her. He kissed her again, softer now but no less charged, and she let herself sink into it, into him, until she wasn't sure if the warmth came from the sun or from his hands. When they finally paused, she stayed close, her forehead resting lightly against his. She could feel the steady beat of his heart through the narrow space between them. Her breath slowed to match his, the wind wrapping around them like it, too, knew to keep this moment untouched. The hills stretched out below, but neither looked at them. For now, the only horizon that mattered was the one they'd stepped into together. Wordless, certain, and impossibly fragile in its perfection. The road hummed beneath them, the car cutting through the dusky stretch of countryside. The air inside was warm, touched with the faint scent of her perfume, and the lingering heat of the hilltop. Her hand rested on the console, fingers loose, and every time his shifted gears, the back of his knuckles brushed against hers. Neither pulled away. They didn't fill the space with words. Instead, they let the quiet be threaded through with glances, small, weighted looks that carried more than conversation could. Outside, the last of the sun drained from the sky, replaced by a scatter of early stars. She didn't think about the gallery meeting, the flights, or the city she'd just left. The only future she cared about was the next curve of the road ahead. Her phone rang, Florence lighting up the screen. She hesitated, then answered, the voice on the other end asking where she was. Sophia's eyes stayed on the horizon. "I'm not doing this show," she said simply. Silence stretched from the other end of the line. She hung up before they could answer. When she glanced sideways, Luca was smiling. Not triumphant, not questioning, just quietly certain. She smiled back, the tension in her shoulders easing. The car surged forward, Tuscany drawing nearer with every mile, and for the first time in weeks, the air between them felt exactly right.